They were born into a life most people couldn't even dream of. Daniel and Sophia Harrington, 16-year-old twins of millionaire real estate tycoon Edward Harrington, grew up surrounded by privilege so heavy it felt like armor. Private drivers, marble staircases, and tutors flown in from across the country. From the outside, they looked like the perfect heirs to the Harrington Empire, smiling in polished family portraits framed in gold. But behind the grand gates of their estate, a darker truth lingered. No matter how many tutors their father hired, no matter how many practice exams were shoved under their noses, Daniel and Sophia failed every single test. Math scores in the gutter, essays marked in angry red, science exams returned with big zeros circled at the top. For all their privilege, the twins carried a secret shame. They were sinking, and nothing, not the expensive schools, not the Harrington name, could keep them afloat. Their father's disappointment was merciless. At the dinner table, Edward's voice thundered against the mahogany walls. "You're embarrassing this family. Harringtons don't fail, Harringtons achieve. If you can't manage to pass a single exam, then perhaps you're not worthy of the name you carry." The words stung like open wounds. Daniel clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to shout back, while Sophia lowered her gaze, cheeks burning with shame. For the twins, failure no longer meant just bad grades, it meant rejection from the one person whose approval they desperately craved. That night, the siblings retreated to their separate rooms, the mansion's golden glow feeling more like a prison than a home. Behind closed doors, Daniel buried his face in his hands, while Sophia whispered to herself, "What if he's right? What if we really are nothing?" Neither of them knew that hope was waiting in the most unexpected corner of their lives, quiet, steady, and holding a secret powerful enough to break their chains. The next morning, the Harrington estate looked as polished as ever, gleaming marble floors, tall windows catching the winter light. Yet for Daniel and Sophia, every corner felt heavy with their father's words. They moved through the halls quietly, their usual bickering replaced by silence. For the first time, the weight of failure had managed to wedge itself between the twins. It was in that silence they noticed her. Maria Johnson, the family maid, was dusting the study late one evening as the twins sat with unopened textbooks spread out before them. She moved with a calm rhythm, her hands steady. Her presence so familiar it usually faded into the background. But this time was different. Daniel caught the faint sound of her voice as she worked. Not humming, not muttering, but whispering words like a prayer. "The only true wisdom," she said softly, "is in knowing you know nothing." Daniel frowned. "What did you just say?" Maria glanced up, her dark eyes unwavering. "Nothing you're ready to understand." And with that, she returned to her dusting, as if the words had never been spoken. Sophia tilted her head, curiosity tugging at her. Wisdom? Knowing nothing? It was strange, almost laughable, coming from someone in a faded uniform holding a rag in her hand, but somehow the words stuck. They clung tighter than any lecture from their expensive tutors ever had. That night, as the twins tossed in their separate beds, neither could shake the sound of her voice. For the first time, they wondered if the woman they had overlooked all their lives, quiet, steady Maria, might know something their teachers, their father, and even their wealth could never give them. And slowly, a seed of curiosity began to grow. The following days dragged on with more failure. Another math exam stained with red ink. Another history essay returned unreadable. Daniel crumpled his paper in frustration, tossing it across his room. Sophia, fighting back tears, whispered, "What if Father was right? What if we really aren't capable?" One evening, as the twins passed through the corridor, they found Maria Johnson polishing the tall windows that overlooked the garden. Her movements were unhurried, almost graceful. Daniel, restless and bitter, finally stopped. "That thing you said the other night," he blurted. "About wisdom? What did it mean?"
Maria set the cloth down slowly, turning to face them. Her voice was calm, but carried a weight that stilled the air. It means the first step to learning is admitting you don't know everything. Pride blocks the mind. Humility opens it. Sophia tilted her head, hesitant. But you're not a teacher. A quiet smile touched Maria's lips. Not anymore, but I was. Once upon a time, I taught philosophy and literature at a university. Life has a way of shifting us, but knowledge, that doesn't fade. The twins exchanged stunned glances. A maid? Professor? Daniel crossed his arms, skeptical but curious. So you're saying you could teach us? That you could fix this? Maria shook her head. I can't fix you. Only you can do that. But I can guide you if you're willing to leave your pride at the door. The room was silent. For the first time in their lives, Daniel and Sophia didn't feel talked down to or measured or judged. They felt seen. Sophia whispered, almost afraid of her own voice, "Then teach us, please." Maria picked up her cloth again, her eyes steady. "Tomorrow morning, bring a notebook. We begin from zero." The quiet lessons began before dawn. Every morning, Daniel and Sophia Harrington slipped into the unused library, notebooks in hand, where Maria Johnson waited. She never handed them worksheets. Instead, she asked questions that unsettled their hearts.
Why do you think silence can be dangerous? What does courage sound like? The twins struggled, scribbled, rewrote, and slowly something shifted. For the first time, learning felt alive. But change rarely goes unnoticed. At dinner one night, Edward Harrington studied his children with suspicion. He saw the new light in Sophia's eyes, the way Daniel sat straighter, more defiant. "Your grades are improving," Edward said flatly, carving into his steak. "Who's tutoring you now?" The twins froze. Sophia's fork clinked against her plate. Daniel's pulse raced, but he forced himself to speak. "Maria," he muttered. Edward looked up, stunned. Then he laughed, sharp, bitter. "Maria, the maid, you expect me to believe a woman scrubbing floors is the reason you're improving?" "She was a professor," Sophia blurted, her voice trembling but firm. "She's smarter than anyone you've ever hired." The table went silent. Edward's face hardened, his voice dropping to a growl. "She is staff, nothing more. And you," he pointed at Daniel, "are embarrassing this family by lowering yourself to her level." Daniel's jaw clenched. For years he had bowed his head under his father's shadow, but now Mariah's words burned inside him. Humility opens the mind. Courage gives it voice. He pushed back his chair, standing tall. "She sees us," he said, his voice shaking. "She believes in us, something you've never done." Edward rose to his feet, rage simmering beneath his composure. "If you continue down this path, you'll lose everything. The cars, the trust fund, the Harrington name." Sophia's heart pounded, tears welling, but Daniel met his father's cold gaze without flinching. "Then maybe we need to lose everything," he said, "to figure out who we really are." The words hung in the air like a crack of thunder. Edward's knife hit the plate with a clang as he stormed from the room, leaving his children trembling, but freer than they had ever felt. For the first time, Daniel and Sophia Harrington realized that defiance carried a cost, but they also knew the lessons Mariah had given them were worth every risk. The days after their confrontation with their father were heavy, but Daniel and Sophia Harrington pressed on. Each dawn, they returned to the forgotten library where Mariah Johnson waited, her calm presence steady as ever. She guided them, not with drills or scolding, but with questions that forced them to think deeper. What truth are you afraid to speak? Why does history matter if we forget its pain? The twins wrote furiously, filling page after page with thoughts they never knew they had. One morning, Daniel arrived with someone new. "This is James," he said quietly, motioning to a nervous classmate clutching a biology book. He needs help too." Sophia hesitated, but Mariah only smiled.
"Pull up a chair," she said. That was the beginning. Soon whispers spread through the school. Students who felt overlooked, who had been told they weren't enough, began slipping into the library after hours. A shy girl who never raised her hand, a boy mocked for his accent. One by one, they found their way into Mariah's circle. The dusty library came alive. Old shelves groaned under the weight of forgotten books that now felt like treasures. Under the flicker of fluorescent lights, Mariah's voice carried through the room, not as a maid, but as a teacher once again. "Don't just read the words," she urged. "Listen to what they're trying to tell you." Students debated fiercely, sometimes with tears, sometimes with laughter. They wrote essays that were more confession than assignment.
For the first time, they weren't learning to pass. They were learning to live. But change never goes unnoticed. Teachers began to whisper. Parents started asking questions. Why were their children suddenly quoting philosophers and writing with conviction? Why were they crediting a maid? One gray afternoon, Maria was called into the assistant principal's office. The words were curt, clinical. "This is unorthodox. You are not certified to teach. You must stop." Maria's spine straightened, her voice calm but unyielding. "Saving children's lives isn't in my job description either, but I did it anyway." When she walked out of that office, her fate uncertain, Daniel and Sophia realized something profound. Maria hadn't just taught them knowledge, she had shown them what true power looked like, the kind that grows in silence, defies authority, and sparks a revolution, one voice at a time. Winter settled heavy over the Harrington estate, but the real chill came inside the school. One morning, Daniel and Sophia walked into the library, notebooks ready, only to find the room empty. No soft humming, no worn mop leaning against the wall, no Maria. Whispers filled the hallways. By midday, she had been dismissed. Budget cuts, they said, but everyone knew better. The truth was simple. Maria had been silenced. The twins were devastated. Daniel sat in the cafeteria, staring at his notebook, unable to write. Sophia tried to read, but the words blurred through her tears. Without Maria, the world felt hollow. For weeks, they drifted like ghosts, their spark fading. Then came the announcement, a bulletin pinned boldly at the school entrance. End-of-year speech contest. Topic: what it means to win in life. For most students, it was a chance to impress colleges or collect a scholarship. For Daniel and Sophia, it was something far greater. It was a stage. It was a chance to give Maria back her voice. That night, they opened fresh notebooks side by side. Instead of practicing for grades, they wrote for her. They poured their hearts onto the page, about failure, about courage, about a woman in a faded uniform who had taught them to see the world differently. When the contest night arrived, the auditorium glowed under stage lights. Parents in expensive coats filled the rows. College scouts scribbled notes, and the faculty whispered nervously. Daniel and Sophia waited backstage, their hands trembling, but their eyes fierce. Their names were called. Together, they stepped onto the stage, no longer hidden heirs of privilege, but students with a truth that demanded to be spoken. "My name is Sophia," she began, her voice steady. "And I am Daniel Harrington," he added. "You know us as the twins who failed every test, the ones who wasted opportunities, but you don't know the whole story." They spoke of Maria, of the lessons whispered between library shelves, of how she taught them that winning wasn't about grades, wealth, or names carved on buildings. "She didn't just clean the floors," Sophia said, voice breaking. "She cleared the fog in our minds. She gave us courage to believe we were more than failures." For a moment, silence wrapped the auditorium. Then one clap, Another until the entire hall rose in thunderous applause, and at the very back, a figure with quiet eyes and calloused hands wiped away tears. Maria had come back, not to speak, but to watch her students finally shine. The twins' speech swept through the school like wildfire, then beyond. Headlines carried their story. Millionaire's children, credit Maid for saving their future. For once, the Harrington name wasn't tied to business deals or luxury estates, but to truth, and at the center of it was Maria Johnson. Opportunities followed. Colleges reached out, and invitations poured in for Maria to speak. Doors that had long been closed began to creak open again, not because of her amiablesome, but because the world could no longer ignore the impact she had made. As for Daniel and Sophia, they graduated with more than passing grades. They carried purpose. When asked about their future, Daniel answered firmly, "We don't want to just succeed for ourselves. We want to build a place where others like us, kids who feel unseen, can learn with honesty and courage." That summer, standing on Mariah's porch with a simple folder in hand, the twins presented her with their plan, the Maria Institute, a community center dedicated to teaching the way she had taught them, not with judgment, but with patience, truth, and vision. Tears filled Maria's eyes as she whispered, "Only if we do it together." And so together they began. True education isn't about wealth, privilege, or perfect grades. It's about transformation. Sometimes the greatest teachers are the ones the world overlooks, yet they carry wisdom that can change lives forever. What about you? Have you ever had someone unexpected teach you a lesson that shaped your life? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And if this journey moved you, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss more stories of courage, hope, and second chances.